What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix for Week 5 of the 2021 CFL season. I'm Ryan Coop here with your Week 5 quarterback preview to kick things off this week. Going into this week, going to be looking at things a little bit differently in terms of player projections, which players I have my eye on this week. I did some thinking. Because the last couple weeks for me have just been disappointments in the 60-point range. I'm sure they've been disappointments for a lot of people. My general mark when I'm trying to think of a fantasy football week, I'm trying to get to that 100-point level. If I can hit 100 points, I am satisfied with my performance, especially in a down fantasy year. But it's hard to hit that range. You got to get those points on the board. One interesting way I thought of looking at this is looking at, you have a $40,000 salary cap. How much money do you need to spend or how many points do you need per $1,000 to get to that 100-point mark? It's about 2.5. Well, in fact, it's actually exactly 2.5. So if you can get 2.5 points for every $1,000 you spend in CFL Fantasy, you will hit that 100-point mark. So I started looking at what is everybody's salary for this week. What would 2.5 times that 2.5 points per $1,000? What would that look like? What would 2 points, 1.5, 1 point per each, kind of these different levels. And then I start looking at the options of, okay, what's their average so far this season, their point range? Where does that put their value in? And who do I see being able to hit that threshold of 2.5 points per $1,000 spent? And believe me, it led to some very interesting thoughts and tactics coming into the new week, and especially at the quarterback position. Because if you want to talk about getting bang for your buck, which is really what this model is all based on, you want to make sure you get a guy that's hitting you 2.5 points per $1,000, or has a floor of getting you at least 2 points for each $1,000 you spend. So I took a look at the quarterbacks. Here's a chart for you up on the screen now. Taking a look at all the quarterbacks for this week, you can see the different point thresholds there, and the averages for each of these guys. Given their salaries for this week, none of them have hit a single performance of truly worth the value that's going to get you to that 100-point mark in a single week yet this season. None of them have had their averages in that 2.5 threshold either. You've got Nick Arbuckle in one start, put up 23 points. That's the closest you're getting to the value for your money there. Jake Mayer in the 1.5 range. But for most of these quarterbacks, you're seeing them, and same thing with Dane Evans. Most of these quarterbacks, you're getting somewhere between, 1 point to 1.5 points per $1,000 you spend, which, when there's other positions that are getting you much better options, I'm not so sure quarterback's the position to spend a lot of money on anymore. We've seen disappointing performance week after week from these guys, and to me, just looking at some of these totals, it's astronomical performances you need to get the true value out of a guy like a Cody Fajardo. If you're getting that 2.5 threshold, you need him to put up 32.7 points against the Bombers defense this week. Given, 4 points per 100 passing yards, 4 points per passing touchdown, to get 32 points, you need 300, 400 day, a couple passing touchdowns, maybe a touchdown along the ground as well. Just for example, quick math in my head, a 300-yard, 3-touchdown through the air performance is only putting you 24 points on the board. So that's why, to me, looking at these options here, you can see the ones I like, I'm green lighting are the ones in green. Yellow light meaning, maybe I'm going, maybe I'm not. Depends if we're hitting the nail on the head with the timing here. And the red is just stop. I'm not going in that direction. I have two of the top quarterbacks in that stop category. in that red light category and Cody Fajardo and Zach Collaros this week, because you're going to need 32 points for Fajardo to be worth it to me. You're going to need 29 from Collaros, or at least, over 23 from either of these guys to be close to the full bang for your buck. And I just don't see that happening against, either of these teams. Maybe Fajardo can get up there in yardage. The Bombers seem to be giving up a lot of passing yards now again, but they're not giving a whole ton of points up. And so if Fajardo's not putting all those touchdowns on the board, I really don't think he gets there to the true value for this week. I think he slots somewhere in that 1.5 to 2 points modifier range there. I think Collaros, same thing, is probably hovering around the 1.5 modifier, the 17.4 points, something like that this week. So at their high price ranges, I'm staying away from those guys. I'm also staying away from Matt Nichols at the very bottom range. He doesn't have a huge point total to get to really be worth that value. And he only needs to get 16.3 points to get there, but he's averaging just 5 points this season. That Ottawa offense hasn't gotten anything done. Nichols is not going to throw you with too many 300-yard games. He's not going to be getting a ton of touchdowns on the board as of right now. So I'm staying away still from Matt Nichols, as much as I love the value plays. Cautious, the yellow-white guys I've got. Vernon Adams Jr., $11,871 his salary comes at. He's averaged 17.9 points this year. He's facing an Ottawa defense that's allowed the second most against quarterbacks on average in 18.8. Things seem like they could be on the upswing here for Adams Jr. I think he's struggled in the last 2 weeks. He hasn't gotten the completion percentage down. He's been trying to force the ball downfield, which hasn't been working. I'm expecting at some point this season a bit of course correction there. I'm expecting a bounce back day, a big day from him. Last week, I think he put up around 11.9 points, even in a down week for him. So he's got a bit of a floor. I think he's got a big ceiling. I'm not quite sure he gets to the 29.7 in the 2.5 per $1,000 range there. But I could see a day against this Ottawa team where he's going to be out on the field quite a bit, where Vernon Adams has a big bounce back day and gets himself in that 2-point range. The reason I'm not saying, yes, lock it in, is because he is one of the higher priced options. And so you really need to make sure he gets there, because if he's putting up another point total in the 13 to 15 point range, that's a big disappointment for you, when you could have saved money and gone with one of the cheaper guys and spent that money elsewhere. The other guys, I'm, in the yellow-white zone for me. Dane Evans, if he makes second straight start for the Ticats this week, $10,030. Last week he put up 17.7. I don't think in a given week, seeing the talent we saw from him in 2019, I don't think 25.1 points or higher is quite out of the range of possibility for a Dane Evans. I think he's got the talent on the board to put up a 300-yard game, to put up a couple touchdowns. I could see him having weeks where he hits that 20-point at least, maybe even that 25-point. So he's getting close to worth the value to me. The concern I have is the offensive line is still not good in Hamilton. They gave up, I think, 6 sacks this past week again. So Evans is going to have to be running around quite a bit to avoid the pressure from a strong Toronto defense. He's also missing a couple of his big play receivers still. Some young guys did step up against Montreal. And he's also facing a Toronto defense that I think has been pretty sharp and can shut plays down this season, like they did in that Week 3 matchup with the Bombers. So I think is the potential there for Evans to get you your value this week. But I'm not 100% sold on it. I could see him having another week in that 15 to 20 point range. And Trevor Harris for the Elks is the other one, $9,571. He's had a disappointing year so far. He's averaged just 12.6 points, which isn't even getting, 1.5 points per $1,000 spent. He's putting up the yardage. He's had a couple games around 300 yards, a couple games over, I believe, in the 3 games he has played. But he hasn't put touchdowns on the board. The Elks have, I think only 2 passing touchdowns so far on the season. And that seems to have been the norm for them for the past couple of years, really, where they just stall and have to kick field goals. But I like Trevor Harris as a potential option, because when he's on his game, if he gets those touchdown passes he's missing, that puts him right up there as a 20-point week. I think 23.9 points, that 2.5 point threshold, is really manageable for Harris if he can get those touchdowns. Remember, he's got talented receivers at his disposal, and he faces a Calgary team that's had the worst totals against quarterbacks so far this season. So I'm cautiously optimistic on Trevor Harris this week to finally have that bounce back. I know it's always a tough game against Calgary for Edmonton, and I'm a little bit concerned about the after effect of the COVID outbreak for the Elks. We don't know who's all tested positive, who's had effects, how severe the effects they've faced. I don't believe any of them were hospitalized or anything like that, thankfully. But how does that affect, the body and the preparation for football coming up this week? So I'm a little cautious. I'm not sold on going on Trevor Harris quite yet, but I think he does make an intriguing play and potentially has the option to be a guy that's going to get you your value this week at quarterback. But the 2 options I really like this week are 2 of the cheaper options available to you, and 2 younger quarterbacks getting starts once again. It's Nick Arbuckle for Toronto, $9,726. In his first start against Winnipeg last week, he looked great. He put up, or 2 weeks ago, he put up 23 points, which was really close to actually getting him in that 2.5 modifier territory. So I like the potential of Arbuckle. I think if Hamilton, goes back to what we saw the first 2 weeks of struggling offensively, their defense being out on the field, if Arbuckle gets himself in a rhythm, he could have a big day against that Ticats defense that, has also given up a lot of points to quarterbacks so far this season. So I kind of like Arbuckle as a pick this week. I think he has the potential to put up a decent big game for you. I think he's got a decent floor as well with the talent at his disposal. I could see at least a 15-point week as a floor for him this week. I could see him getting in that 20 to 25 point range if he does have a good day. So I like Arbuckle this week. But to me, my go-to pick, the guy I am likely locking in my lineup at quarterback, is Jake Mayer out in Calgary. $7,000. Besides Matt Nichols, he's the cheapest one available to you. He comes in back-to-back 300-yard passing games. He's averaging 12.6 points. He's facing an Edmonton defense that, to their credit, has given up the least point total to quarterbacks so far this season. But if you look at who they've played Matt Nichols, who's struggled. They've played Vernon Adams Jr., who's struggled to get things going a little bit offensively. And to their credit, they did shut down Michael Riley in that game against BC fairly well. So some credit needs to be given to the Elks defense. I think some of their lower totals against are based on the performances of the guys they are facing more so as well. So I think they could have a breakthrough against this Edmonton defense as tight as they've been. And, his price being so low, Mayer really doesn't need to put you up a ton of points to be worth the bang for the buck. If he puts up 18 points, that's a successful week for you. Last week, he put up 12.6. He had a very efficient passing day. He didn't get any touchdowns out of that. I think he put up, he was put up around a 12-point week against the Bombers. And add one passing touchdown to that, it's a 16-point week, and he's getting in that range. So he seems to be throwing the ball really well. I've noticed he's thrown some really accurate passes. He's not really turning the ball over ever since that first quarter against Montreal. He's had a very fine game the past 6-7 quarters or so that he's played. I think Calgary's going to start getting on a bit of a roll here, and I really like Jake Maier, especially given all of these things I've mentioned, where we're really not seeing, true value for the money you're spending at quarterback from any of these guys so far this season from some of the higher priced options. So those are your options at quarterback for week number 5. That's kind of where I'm leaning, is spending less money at the position, because I think there's some really great options at some of the other positions this week. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this new projection model that I'm going based on? Does it make sense? Does it not? Is it helpful to interpret fantasy decisions in this way? To me, I think it is, but hey, everybody thinks differently, and certainly I'm always ears to help see if there's any way I can improve these models to help myself get back on track for a 100-point week, and of course, help you get back there as well. So stay tuned for later today. I'll have the running back preview out tomorrow. I'll talk wide receivers and defense, and then Friday I will have your injury report and depth chart update. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't, and if you have any fantasy questions, certainly leave them in the comments or tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42 as well. That does it for the Week 5 quarterback preview. Thanks for watching as always. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.